she's still trying to figure out how I became mayor in the first place.
Hey everyone, you're in good traffic. Thank you so much for coming back. Another week, another episode of the show. This is episode 26. We're at the 6-month mark, half a year this week, and I'm joined by someone very special that I have wanted to have on the show from the beginning. I would like to say I set it up so that the 6-month episode could be this guest, but I'm joined by the mayor of Tempe, Arizona, Corey Woods. Corey, first of all, thank you so much for being here in good traffic today.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
You know, mayor is one of those positions that I think a lot of kids grow up thinking about and saying in their class to their friends, I want to be a mayor someday. But then somewhere along the line, I think a lot of us, I know I was one of those kids, somewhere along the line, a lot of folks kind of maybe lose track of the trajectory on how to actually get to that point. So I would love to start off, I think you have a really interesting role just in general in terms of the how you get to be in the position that you're in. Could you just tell a little story about maybe how you, when you started thinking about the fact that you wanted to become the leader of a city here in Arizona and when you actually took the steps and how that worked out to getting to the place you're at today?
I was thinking that before that maybe it's because some of the kids realize how crazy my job actually is and are like, I don't want to do what that guy does. That's nuts. Yeah. But honestly, how it all started for me was I remember in 5th grade, we had an opportunity to run for a sort of class representative. And that was my first opportunity to get involved in student government. And it really intrigued me, partially because I had a family that talked a lot about politics. They were not involved as elected officials themselves or doing a lot of stuff with the Democratic or Republican Party or anything of that nature. But they were always watching Sunday morning talk shows and watching morning talk shows. And so I was hearing a lot in my house about domestic policy and foreign policy and things of that nature. And so for me, I think that's what really piqued my interest in getting involved in public service. And so when I would just see these people on TV wearing these suits and talking about all of these different things. And I just thought, I really want to do that. That seems really interesting because it seems like not only are they incredibly well-spoken, well-dressed, smart people, but they have an ability to have an impact on what's going on, whether it's locally or statewide or federally. And so that just really intrigued me. And I just thought, whenever I get an opportunity to get into that world, I really want to jump in with both feet. And so that was for me first time in 5th grade. And from basically 5th grade all the way through the end of my sophomore year of college, I was very heavily involved in student government. And I ended up, when I moved out here to go to graduate school at Arizona State University back in 2003. My God, 2020. I didn't move here last year, people. I can promise you that.
Say, whoa, I didn't know that.
I moved here and 6 months later, I was mayor. So I moved here in 2003. And at that point, my goal was not to run for public office. I was going to get a master's degree in educational leadership and policy studies at the College of Education at ASU, now the Mary Lou Fulton College of Education. And about 2 years into my time as a full-time graduate student, I made the decision that I wanted to run for public office. All of a sudden, that whole bug came back very strongly. And I thought, I really want to get involved and run for office locally. I really love Tempe. I really want to stay here, and I really want to have an impact on the local politics in this community. And that's what sort of got me into running for office in the first place. And it was interesting because that first race in 2006, I actually lost. And there were 5 of us running for what at that point were 3 available seats, and I finished dead last in a field of 5 people. It's a race which is people don't even really remember anymore in the city of Tempe because I've won every race since then. So it's actually funny how a lot of people go, I don't remember you losing. I'm like, I remember losing. I was 27 years old, and how can you forget losing a race in front of 175,000 of your closest friends? But I guess, since I've had success since then, winning subsequent council races and winning the mayor's race in 2020, a lot of people forgot that race actually took place. But it's interesting. I didn't anticipate that this was going to be what my time in Tempe would look like, but I'm very happy and very proud that it did.
That's an awesome story. Why Tempe? I'm curious. You knew you wanted to run for a position like this. You knew you wanted to get involved in politics, but why was this the city that you felt was worth this, 20-some year investment of your time and climb?
I think part of it was that we moved around a lot when I was a child. So I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, and we lived there for 3 years. And my father's job took us from Atlanta to Anderson, Indiana, and then to Detroit, Michigan. And then we lived in the Bronx for a couple of years in New York City. And then we ended up living in New Rochelle, New York, which is really where I finally kind of eventually grew up. And that was, so while my kind of like middle and high school life, we were in one place. I had this experience of we were moving every 2 to 3 years for a period of my life. And so my and then I went to college. I went back to college at University of Michigan when I was 17 years old and got my degree in 4 years and stayed working in Michigan for 3 more years after that. But then when I moved down here to ASU, my first thought was, well, I'll go to college here. I'll get my degree in 2 years. It was a 2-year master's program. And then I'll go somewhere else and get a PhD. Like that was actually my initial goal. So when I moved to Arizona, my first thought was not to move to Tempe for the purpose of trying to take over the political scene. It was just to get a master's degree. But after about a year and a half or so being here, I just really loved it. Like first of all, the cost of living was a lot cheaper back then for people who were living here. I also had never really lived in a warm weather climate before either. I mean, all those places that I talked about, Atlanta, yes, is a warmer place, but I was only there till I was 3 years old. Every other place that I had lived was either on the East Coast or in the Midwest, and those places are notoriously cold. And so moving down here, there was loads of sunlight, and it was warm year round, and so, I mean, between like the lower cost of living, the weather, and then just generally just liking the people that I came into contact with. I love the university. I love the people in Tempe that I had a chance to interact with. And that's sort of, I think, when I decided to get into politics was because I really knew that I wanted to be in Tempe for the long term because I loved it so much. And I thought, well, what better way to step up my involvement in this community than by running for office and having an opportunity to have some input in public policy?
Sure. And I love how there's the education piece that's woven throughout this story, right? That's why you came out here. It seems to be a bit that you keep mentioning over and over again. And I think my biggest love for Tempe comes from the fact that I would call it kind of a grown-up college town, right? We have all the wonderful things that come with a college town, that massive, nice campus that is inherently very walkable, right? An abundance of car-free space. It kind of gives you, I would presume, as a leader of this place, kind of this leg up on other cities. Like we already have this large, very walkable thing that isn't going anywhere. It's sitting there right in the middle. We get to kind of build off it and plan around it. Was that something that you thought of going into it? Is it something that maybe has evolved? How does, I guess, your collaboration with a lot of people, I think by a lot of metrics would say is the largest university in the United States, or one of at least, how does that kind of work, planning a city around and alongside of a university?
Well, you are correct. I mean, Arizona State University is the largest public university in the entire country. I mean, and it continues to get bigger every year. Every year, it seems to me, when I see Dr. Crow talking, he'll say, this year we're welcoming our largest incoming freshman class ever. So the university is only getting bigger. I think they're either at or close to 100,000 students between all of the different campuses in the different parts of the valley. So it's a pretty phenomenal accomplishment. And I have regular meetings on a quarterly basis with Dr. Crow and members of his senior leadership team to talk about things that the city of Tempe is looking to do, but also to understand more about the university's plans and how we have the ability to work together on things as much as possible. Do we always agree on everything? No. I mean, sometimes we have different ideas or different visions for where we want the city to go. But I would say, probably on 80 to 90% of what we talk about, there is a lot of alignment. And we have a really great relationship. And from my perspective, I've been a council member now for the city of Tempe for 12 years. And I think this is the best the relationship has ever been with the university in terms of the synergy and the relationship. So I'm very proud that we have the ability to have regular conversations, have regular meetings, and talk about how to sort of chart a course together. And as I said, I mean, for anyone listening, it's not that we sit down and negotiate everything. You obviously aren't negotiating everything when you're only meeting on a quarterly basis. But I will say there's not a lot of times when I'm sitting down with Dr. Crow or a couple of members of his team going, wow, that's wildly divergent from what we wanted to do. Most of the time, we are pretty much on the same page with where we think the community is going or where it needs to go moving forward to promote true sustainability. So, but to your point, this is kind of like dovetails off of what you were saying. I think that's one of the biggest challenges we are having, though, in our community at this point. And it's not pertaining to ASU in any way specifically. It's just sort of about the overall size and growth here in the city of Tempe. You talked about how urban the city is becoming and the walkability of the city of Tempe that I do feel gives us a real competitive advantage. And it's one of the reasons why people want to move here, or businesses want to come here, or existing businesses want to expand their current operations. But at the same time, I think it is more challenging if you've been in Tempe for a long time and you've all of a sudden see the population really boom, and you're hearing all of these sort of population projections about how much bigger the city is going to get over the next 10, 20, and even 30 years. And so I find that is where a lot of the creative tension is taking place now in the city of Tempe, is between, the sort of, people who really like what the city was and what kind of made it what it was, which I also can clearly appreciate. It's why I chose to live here. I clearly thought I loved the people who live here, and I loved the decision making that got us to this point that we're at. But I'm also a student of reality and data, and the fact that I know that the city of Tempe is a rapidly evolving place, that Maricopa County is the fastest growing county in the entire country, that an average of probably 156 people per day move to Maricopa County. I mean, so we have to make sure that we have housing and infrastructure that actually prepares us for the incoming population that will be here, not just simply the people that live here today, but the people that we know are going to be here over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And I think that's critically important. But that is where you see a lot of the tension taking place now of, many times folks who have been here a little bit longer, who sometimes will go, well, I don't like the fact that all of these people are coming here, and I don't think that we should be getting this big, and I don't like the population growth because it's a lot bigger and there's taller buildings and more density. And the thing that I'm trying to say is, it's not about people selling out to developers or things of that nature, or some of the narratives that you hear that I think are rather unfortunate. I think it's simply the city council and the city leadership responding to the population trends that are already taking place, and the ones that we know are going to continue to take place, and trying to make sure that the city is actually well positioned. Because if you don't do those things, and then 10 years from now you have 30, 40, 50,000 more people, and you are woefully underprepared from a housing and infrastructure standpoint, you're going to have a real mess on your hands. And I don't want whoever comes in after me as mayor to go, why in the world did Corey and the existing city council, why did those people punt these tough decisions, as opposed to actually just making the tough decisions while they were in office? That's what they were elected to do in the first place. So I want people to look back on my time in public office and the time that I spent here as being like, they actually looked at the data, they looked at facts, and they said, we have to find ways to move this city forward in the correct way, and not say, well, I really liked how it was when I moved here in 2003, which is when I moved here, but that time is 21 years of the past. And I can't make decisions moving forward based on what happened 21 years ago. I have to base them on what's going on now and where things are going to go.
Yeah, so I know with that in mind that Prop 478 right now, amending the 2050 general plan, is on the table. From a legislative and planning perspective, what are the sorts of things that are being discussed in a city like Tempe that's in this place of a really pivotal moment? What are the sorts of actual pieces of legislature and policy that are on the table to actually make that happen, or I guess not, if it doesn't move forward?
Well, I mean, I'm a very strong supporter of Prop 478, which is our Tempe Tomorrow General Plan 2050. I think it's really critically important. I think it's a great document that was put together over a nearly 2-year period with members of our community and our planning staff. I mean, I appointed a community working group of 25 people when it first started. There was a technical advisory group of 66 people, most of them Tempe residents who were involved in that process as well. It went before a development review commission, which are all Tempe residents, and then to the city council. I mean, there were over 40 community meetings in all parts of our city. The community working group themselves were representative of all different sections and regions of the city of Tempe's 40 square miles. And I think they put together a great plan that really encompassed where we need to be from a housing standpoint, a lot of sustainability and climate change and resilience, lots of conversations about walkability and transportation, bicycle infrastructure, things of that nature, which I think really are critically important to our future as we move forward. I mean, it's 2024, but it's the General Plan 2050. We're trying to look 25, 26 years out to make sure that we are actually adequately prepared for what's going to be coming. So no, I think it's a very strong plan, and it was put together by residents. It was not put together by me and the city council. After I saw the document, that I had an opportunity, along with the council, to make some tweaks to right at the tail end of the process. I wish I had been involved right in the beginning. I mean, I was very impressed with what I believe is 179 pages of a very cohesive, comprehensive document that really encompasses all of those things that I talked about before. I think it really is critically important for our future, and I definitely hope that our residents support it.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you for kind of going into that a little bit there. I think an interesting piece that you mentioned earlier is that you have these historic single family. We moved to cul-de-sac here from Maple Ash. We were living in that area, right? So prime example of these beautiful, small, old homes that a lot of people, residents have probably been in for a long time, and then a couple blocks away, you have West 6, you have some of the larger buildings in Tempe. How has it been from a really kind of organizational standpoint, organizing and leading the conversations between both of those groups? Like, I think what I'm trying to get at is a lot of people, I don't think know
I know what
that
you're trying to
looks
get
like.
at.
You know what I mean? They don't know what that looks like, the facilitation of that conversation. How does that go from an organizational standpoint?
It's difficult. I mean, that's the honest truth. I mean, the fact is, look, we have wonderful residents from all different age groups and backgrounds and neighborhoods, but it's difficult because you many times have, maybe difficult's not the right word, maybe challenging is the right word, because you have people who have very strong, passionate views about where they think our city currently is and where it should move in the direction it should move in going forward. And that can be challenging because no one wants the city to crumble in ashes. I mean, everyone's perspective, people are coming to those meetings or taking part in a community working group for the general plan or serving on one of our 28 boards and commissions. They're doing this work because they really care about the city and they care about the future of our community. But sometimes that means that you have very differing viewpoints about where it should go. And I mean, there are some folks who will say, just to go back to the previous conversation, that, I think that the charm of Tempe is in the single family neighborhoods, and I really want to make sure that we're preserving those. And I don't want a lot of high density, high rise development that I really feel is going to detract from the overall quality and character and feel of this community. Those people aren't saying that because they hate Tempe. They love Tempe. And from their perspective, that is the best version of Tempe. So they advocate for it very forcefully. And I can actually totally appreciate that. But at the same time, you have other people who are advocating for much more in the way of density and saying, look, we have real housing supply needs. We have housing affordability concerns. We have to make sure that we find ways for people to get around without a single-use automobile. Because you've got a situation now where Phoenix is the 5th largest city in the entire country. As I mentioned before, Maricopa County is the fastest growing county population-wise in the country, and you have to provide more ways for people to get around other than just simply by using cars, which is why you have light rail, which is why you have the modern streetcar system, which is why you have the orbit buses, which is why you have plans for more buffered and protected bike lanes, and you have developments like cul-de-sac where we're sitting today. And so those folks also, though, aren't trying to destroy the city. They're not saying, I want to build taller buildings in the downtown, or I want to build more density along Apache Boulevard, or I want to create more bike lanes because I'm trying to destroy the look and feel and character of our community. They're doing that because they also think that's the right direction for the city. And so I think that that's the major challenge that we all have to sort of accept together, is that we're all coming in with good intentions about what we think is right for our community. We might have different ideas about how we feel that we actually get there, or what the right policy prescriptions are to get to that point. But I think we have to come in with the perspective that we're all trying to do the right thing, and we're all advocating as hard as we can because we legitimately, deep down in our hearts and souls, feel like that's the right thing to do. I think what the unfortunate thing is when you get to a place where one side is demonizing the other for feeling like, well, your intentions are not pure, and you're trying to do this because you don't care about Tempe. You're trying to, that's silly. It's like people don't show up to community meetings for which they are not being paid to advocate for these things if they didn't care about the future of the city. They just might have a different perspective than you do. And so I think what's important in my role is trying to find ways, as you said, to thoughtfully facilitate those conversations, allow everyone to feel heard and to feel as if their viewpoints matter, and find a way to come to some reasonable middle ground between all of those positions. And actually, interestingly enough, going all the way back to the conversation about the General Plan 2050, that's what I feel the document does very well. It's a blend of what different people in our community wanted. There are these things that the council put over a lot of the portions of our city near single-family neighborhoods called cultural resource areas, which more or less sort of, for lack of a better term, freezes the density in those sections to make sure that these single family neighborhoods are being actively protected and that they aren't going to become subject to high-rise development. But at the same time, we are looking at places like, let's say, the corner of Mill and Southern, where you have four corners of sort of strip mall retail and an iconic plaza in Donnell Plaza right there at that southwest corner where the Yucca Tap Room is, which is the longest, longest running live music venue in the entire city. And you're trying to find ways to think, well, how do we create some maybe like mixed use, low density uses for these corners to really ensure that you can actually have,
We got guests. Hello, everyone.
We got guests. we got company.
Welcome.
All of a sudden, I heard all the stuff, I couldn't see anything, but I heard things going on in the headphones. So what's going on, people? What's going on, people? How you doing?
Welcome.
See, so but I think that creating those mixed use, low density spaces is a great place to create additional housing, to create more walkability, to support those small businesses that are actually in those sites, because that's a lot of what they were talking about to me is, 35 years ago, you didn't have Amazon. People weren't going online and buying all of this stuff. People had to go to a strip center to buy goods or to get services. And now people can go online and get all of this stuff. And so we would love to have housing in some of these locations to actually have people physically living on site to support the retail and the businesses that are actually here. And so I think the plan is a really good middle ground between both of those positions. And I think it does an exceptional job at balancing all of the interests of our community. And I guess we're going to find out, on Tuesday, March 12th, what the final vote is. So I'll be definitely glued to my laptop hitting F5. So
Certainly. And
because literally I will be. I
believe you.
I do that.
F5. That's the shortcut for anybody that didn't know. No, but I love. Or you. I love the kind of the compromise that it sounds like you've worked really intentionally and quite hard on achieving. And I think that I'm very interested in this urbanism walkability conversation becoming one with popular culture, not a more fringe piece of maybe one side of the political aisle's discussion. And it sounds like that's something that you've put a lot of intentionality into. So I really appreciate that for Tempe, but also just sounds like as a model for what cities hopefully can see happen here and start to apply in their own way. To go back to cul-de-sac specifically for a minute, perfect timing as a bunch of the cul-de-sac crew.
I was going to say, it's almost like they knew we were going to be talking about that, so they walked in right at that moment.
It's perfect. But I would love to hear when you first heard of this idea, how it was presented to you, and kind of maybe your initial reaction, and then how you maybe changed or just altered your stance and got behind it, and then started to support and help make this a reality that we're sitting in live here today.
Well, I was just to make sure I'm being totally factual. So the cul-de-sac property was actually approved prior to my becoming mayor. And I wasn't even on the city council at that point. I was a private citizen. I took 4 years off in between my council service in 2016 when I was elected mayor and started serving as mayor in July of 2020. So it was approved by my predecessor Mark Mitchell and the council at the time. So at the point that I became mayor, the cul-de-sac development was already in process. But I was watching, obviously, as an interested observer, just as a resident of the city of Tempe, and I was immediately very intrigued by the concept and very supportive of it, because if you understand that there are more and more people coming around now that don't sort of plan their entire lives around their car. They're looking for more walkable spaces where they can actually have more amenities on site, where they can have their own little sort of community within a community, which is really what I consider cul-de-sac to be. They're also looking at places where they can directly access public transportation, like you can get right on the light rail right outside. You can, we're in the process right now of doing a protected bike lane on Smith Road that would go all the way out to Tempe Marketplace, so people can actually get from cul-de-sac over to where lots of shopping is in the northeast corner of the city. For me, there was no convincing that needed to be done. I mean, frankly, it was I thought it was a phenomenal project from the very start, and I think it really did a great job of capturing where a lot of people in our community want to be. And frankly, of all different age ranges, because there are different reasons. Some people, it's because they just simply want an environment that's more walkable. There are some people where it's more about a climate change and sustainability kind of angle of like, hey, I really don't want to, emit more carbon into the air and be burning more fossil fuels. So I'd like to live somewhere where we're not going to be owning cars, and we're going to find other ways to get around and use public transportation and use a lot of the amenities on site. But I think, one of the things that really is critically important when you talk about sort of the notion of having an open mind, and, I've definitely gotten this from a couple of residents, and it's always a very funny conversation to have. It's like, someone said to me, well, why would you want to have a community where people are not going to be able to own a car? Like, how is that actually going to work? That doesn't make sense. I would never want to live somewhere. I'm like, well, you don't have to live there. I mean, that's the beauty of a free country. You don't have to live anywhere you don't want to live. I mean, the fact of the matter is, just because something is not right for you doesn't mean that it's not the right thing for others to do. And I think sometimes that is a problem in society of basically saying, well, I wouldn't want to live that way. Well, so what? Like, you wouldn't want to live that way, so don't live that way. But obviously, this development has been a tremendous success in our community, and I know there's other expansion of the cul-de-sac brand coming up in other cities and other states, and I think that's tremendously exciting, and it speaks to the success of this model and the fact that this is something that people really want. And so I live, you talked about West 6th earlier. I mean, I live in an apartment complex directly north of West 6th. And there's people who say the same thing to me about, well, I wouldn't want to live in the downtown because it's too crowded or there's just too many high rises. I'm like, I've lived in the downtown for 4 years and I love living downtown. I love the ability to, the art festival is actually this weekend. Yep. And the ability for me to walk right outside my front door and walk around and talk to all the artists and all the vendors is fantastic. I go to all the second Sundays on Mill events that the Downtown Tempe Authority throws, and I walk right out my front door and I can actually talk to a lot of the vendors and have conversations with people. And there are days when I don't get in my car at all because all of my meetings are in that same general vicinity, or I can walk to City Hall in under 5 minutes. Like, I deliberately, purposely chose that lifestyle because it fits what I want to do. And so I think that developments like where we're sitting right now at Cul-de-sac are tremendously innovative and tremendously forward thinking. And I think that's why you're seeing such a huge demand for them in other parts of our country and other parts of our region, because people want to live like this. There are a lot of people who really want an environment where they're not constantly in cars, where they're not spending tons of time in gridlock and sitting in traffic, and where they have a lot of the amenities that they frankly want right there on site, and a community of other like-minded people that they have the ability to talk to and get to know and really thoughtfully bond with. So I love the fact that Cul-de-sac is here, and I'm so happy and so proud that the first one ever is right here in Tempe, Arizona.
Amen. That's awesome. Let's return on that same note to the College Town piece that we talked about earlier, which I think is one of the greatest parts of Tempe. Like we said, large car-free spaces scattered throughout. But looking at it from kind of the other lens, which is something I've always thought might be a challenge from the city's perspective, which is the potential for seasonality that comes with growth, right? There's a 3-month period of every year where a large part of the student population might leave the area entirely. Has there been any sort of challenges that have arose with that phenomenon that exists? And if so, what do you do to kind of cover for the parts of the year where maybe a large percentage of your population goes elsewhere?
Oh yeah, that's definitely a big deal. And that's actually one of the biggest things I talk to a lot of our property owners in the downtown about, is about trying to make sure that we are finding businesses, restaurants, bars, retail opportunities that really can function 12 months out of the year. At one point, the downtown really was basically ASU. It was ASU students and staff and faculty, and that was pretty much it. But now with all of the different hotels that have come in now, the Omni, the Westin, the Canopy, the Tempe Mission Palms, which has been a mainstay in Tempe for quite some time, a lot of the Class A office, the multifamily residential. You've got a very different population down there now than you had before. People like me, who's 45 years old and living in an apartment. I made the decision at the age of 41 to become a renter because it was the best decision for me. And so you have a lot of people like me who are living down there now. It's not just simply college students. And so one of the things that I've had a lot of conversations with the property owners and landlords about is we have to start shifting our mindset to not just simply appeal to college students, because we're always going to have college students in downtown. And I think that's wonderful and part of what makes the city so vibrant and so appealing. But at the same time, you also have a whole different other population of people like me living down there, or the folks living at Mirabella at ASU, in a senior facility. You also have folks who are businessmen and businesswomen who are coming into the hotels and going and living off of expense accounts for a few days and taking clients out to breakfast, lunch, and dinner and trying to have business meetings. So we need to find ways to bring in operators and establishments that actually are not just simply viable for 9 months out of the year until the students go home at the end of May, but really that can actually service the population 12 months year round, because I don't leave in May. I'm here all year. And I know a lot of people who are here 12 months out of the year and are looking for restaurants and bars and other kinds of retail establishments that we can patronize and frequent all the time. So that's been one of the shifts that we've been trying to do with this, what we call Downtown Mill Avenue refresh right now, where we're pumping $22 million into upgrading everything in the downtown starting this coming April. It really is to begin to address a lot of that, to create a better built environment with better sidewalks and tree canopy, and lighting and things of that nature, new kind of public art installations. But it's also to work with our landlords and property owners to bring in operators that really can actually keep people's attention over a 12-month period, not a 9-month period. So I mean, Mill Avenue is going through a very big evolution and transformation right now, and I'm actually really excited to be mayor during that, because I have a lot of ideas for what I think we should be doing moving forward, and I found a lot of very willing partners in the property owners in the downtown who see exactly what I'm seeing and are very excited to see this transition as well.
Yeah. So while you're doing all that amazing progress and that building that's occurring here in that way, it's no secret that Phoenix as a metro area, very sprawling, very car-centric, right? It takes a long time to get from one side of this valley to the other, and there's typically only one way to do that, and it's via private automobile, which is quite a challenge, I would imagine. And I'm curious, working in partnership with the other cities, Phoenix obviously, but even the other cities that are adjacent to Tempe, like Mesa, that maybe sometimes have different priorities, different stances on transportation, how we move people. Like, how does that work in a regional setting like this, where you're trying to do a lot of what we would all consider, I think, that are listening to this show, very positive changes to the built environment, changes to transportation, where maybe some of the adjacent communities aren't on the same page with you?
I feel very fortunate that, I mean, Phoenix, Tempe, and Mesa are the light rail cities. I mean, we are the ones who have this form of transportation that can get you to and from all of our different communities. I mean, we're having conversations right now with the city of Mesa about trying to find ways to extend the Mill Avenue modern streetcar eastbound on Rio Salado to go out to the Cub Stadium. So, I mean, Mayor Giles has been a very good partner in that, and Councilmember Heredia. So the cities that are directly adjacent to us have really embraced public transportation, and I feel like they've been very good partners. We have a very similar vision about what we're trying to collectively accomplish. But I also think about things right now like the Prop 479, which is the Maricopa County Regional Transportation Tax that's going to be going to the ballot in November. I mean, that had universal support from mayors in the East Valley and West Valley, because I think we all recognize that maintaining our roadways and our infrastructure really is critically important. We have to be able to move people around the valley in an effective, efficient manner. And the fact of the matter is, it's not just simply about even our transportation future, it's also our economic development future. If your roadways aren't properly upgraded and people are sitting in traffic for an hour or 2 hours at a time because they can't get to and from where they need to go, at some point, not only does that make it frustrating for residents who live here, it might make them consider moving, but it also means that a lot of businesses aren't going to want to relocate here or expand their existing operations, because they're going to say this just simply isn't a place that's palatable to businesses, whether it's small, medium, or large. And so I do see a lot of movement in that direction on Prop 479. I was at the campaign kickoff about a week or so ago. I mean, it was full of mayors and council members from the East Valley to the West Valley, all understanding that transportation is really critically important to where the valley needs to go. And I don't see a lot of daylight between those folks. And so that's actually very, very exciting. The fact that you have an event that I'm at with the mayor of Mesa, the mayor of Phoenix, but also the mayor of Buckeye and the mayor of Glendale. I mean, we're all there in the same place supporting the same cause. So I think the future is very bright for the valley when it comes to transportation, and specifically multimodal transportation.
That's great to hear. Great to hear. I know tourism and like conferences and all that is a huge part of the valley's economy, and I would imagine that extends greatly to Tempe as well. And with that, typically, it seems as though, at least in my experience, that conferences often bring a lot of car rentals and people needing to move via automobile, or at least having the perception of that. How do you balance the tourism element of a place that is so beautiful, right? Like Allie and I talk about this all the time. We live in the place that everybody else vacations to, which is an awesome thing to do. But that also means that you probably have an interesting dynamic when it comes to planning for visitors versus planning for residents. How does it come down to the dollar amount? Does it come down to, hey, this yields more money for the city? Or is there, what is the breakdown decision kind of triage like for that whole equation?
I guess I can answer with an example. Not everything is about the money to us, clearly. I mean, there are a lot of things that are just frankly about building community and what we can do to create a place that's very welcoming and inviting to current and future residents or people who might be visiting. But at the same time, we have had to look at what are, like, let's say, the contracted events we have at Tempe Town Lake. Because when you have an event there, many times on the weekends, you have to close off roads or do certain kinds of detours. Or when you have a festival in the downtown, you have to close off streets. And so you really do want to make sure that the events that we're having are things that really are a draw to the people who are living here and are also attractive to visitors throughout the valley and perhaps nationally or even internationally, because you don't want to subject your existing residents to loads of street closures and detours if an event really isn't attractive to them, if it's not generating any revenue at all, if it's not generating a lot of people. And the benefit too is, I talk to a lot of the small businesses since I live in the downtown and happen to be mayor. I talk to a lot of the businesses in the downtown after the events take place, and I ask them, how was this event for you?
We lost the camera.
Man down.
We're good.
That's a good time for.
Oh, drink break.
Oh, I'll take whatever you got. Thank you. You're the man, Ryan. Appreciate it. So, see, where's Bree? See? I got it.
Kombucha.
Aaron, what do you have?
I got Pink Lady.
Pink Lady. That's my favorite one, actually. So, no, this is great. So I've got passion fruit and tangerine. So,
Change up sometimes.
that's good.
Kombucha break.
You know what I'm gonna do here? Watch this.
Oh, replace it. There we go.
Bam. How you like that?
I love it.
All right, so let's go back. What was the question again? Make sure I got very excited about Ryan's entry with the carrying kombucha.
Kombucha takes the top of the priority list.
Look,
I understand.
probiotics are very important. It's important to a healthy diet, and hey, why not?
Hey, I'm down to talk about that too if you want to. But hey, talking about kind of the breakdown between tourism, like catering to tourists, catering to residents,
tourism, of course.
where that might butt heads a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I said not everything is about money and return on investment and things of that nature. You clearly, as mayor, are trying to create a community that people want to be in and enjoy being in. But you do have to be mindful of, if you are going to be closing off streets and creating all types of detours and things of that nature, is this event really worth it? Are you going to generate the necessary revenue that goes into the city's general fund that pays for police and fire and solid waste services and human services and things of that nature? So, I mean, when I think about events like, let's say, the art festival that's coming up, that event draws people in, not just simply nationally, but internationally. I mean, it is a world-renowned art festival, and our residents love it as much as our tourists do. And so that event is a huge slam dunk for the city of Tempe, and I'm glad we're doing it. The Downtown Tempe Authority just recently did the first ever Tempe Blooms event in downtown, which were basically, floral installations and sort of live art installations.
We got a bouquet right over there.
There
got
we go.
Some flowers from that.
It was fantastic. So once again, I live right downtown, and I went to it both days. But I then talked to a lot of the restaurateurs in that downtown area who told me we had our best weekend this weekend. I mean, so this was an event where people were actually coming and they were taking pictures of the flowers and posting them to Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and everything else, but they were also sticking around to eat and spend time and money in a lot of the downtown establishments. So they were super excited about the event and can't wait for it to come back and hope it gets even bigger next year. So I think that, the tourism dollars are very critically important to our budget. But once again, it comes back to exactly what we talked about earlier. It's about balance. It's how do you find ways to create an environment that is really hospitable to tourism, where you generate a lot of very necessary revenue for things that you need to do as mayor. It's all about balance. It's all about trying to find ways to make sure that you are generating the necessary dollars that you need to run the city, but at the same time that you are not overwhelming the city with so much tourism and so much activity that your existing residents who live here and pay taxes say that you've really changed the overall character of the community. But that's, once again, it's a delicate balance. And so, there might be some residents that think you're doing a great job at it, and some residents who feel like you're not doing a great job. But you just try to do your best to listen to your residents and hear what they have to say. And you just, and you try to go like, hey, if I'm hearing this enough times from people that they're unhappy about it, they think things are out of balance, perhaps we need to do a little bit of a course correction. But it's a constant balancing act in these jobs. Like, you don't ever get to a place where you can just go, oh, I'm cool. Like, I'm going to just, go on cruise control and just sort of hang out for the rest of my term. Like, that is not something you can do in a job like this. You are pretty much always constantly tweaking and adjusting to make sure that you get things as close to perfect as you possibly can. But I sort of laughing. We laughed about the microphone action a little bit earlier. And you saw me, sort of texting people and trying to coordinate other appointments. That's one of the things about my job in general is that you have a plan when you come into the day, but the reality is events many times dictate what needs to happen. This is not a job where you can say, oh, I'm going to come in from 8 to 5 and I know exactly what's going to take place every day. I know that I'm not going to get everything done on my to-do list when I come in the morning. I know it's not going to happen. It's impossible. And if I come in with the idea that I'm going to, I would probably be constantly frustrated. I come in basically saying, here are the things that I probably want to get done today, and I'm going to try my best to get across the finish line on these items. But at the end of the day, if there's an issue with a small business person, or there's an issue with a resident who has a concern, those things have to take priority. And I many times have to drop things that I was going to do or move things around in my day to accommodate those items because they are very important. So the crazy thing about my job is that there really isn't a rhythm. The only rhythm is not having any rhythm. But if you like that kind of thing, if you're an extrovert like I am and you like public policy and you like solving problems, it's a great job. And so I have my moments of frustration like anyone else in elected office or like anyone else who has a job, period. Yeah. But at the same time, 9 times out of 10, this is the best job a guy could possibly have.
I love that, and we need that excitement. I think I would hope anyone leading the city has that excitement, but I bet that it is still rare. So I appreciate to hear that. Well, the last question we ask everyone, and thank you so much for your time today. This has been an awesome conversation. The last question that we ask everybody on the show, out of all the this show's called Good Traffic. We're trying to kind of take this thing that's unanimously agreed upon as ugly and kind of an inconvenient part of our day and how we move from point A to point B and look at it as potentially this very dynamic and beautiful piece to our day and how we can get to that point and viewing that movement as a crucial and great part of what we're doing every day. So I'm curious, out of all the places you've ever lived, you mentioned some of them earlier, all the jobs you've worked, what has been the best and favorite commute that you've ever had?
Oh, it's now. Oh, it's present. That's the easiest question I've been asked all week, probably all month. Well, we're only like a week into the month, I guess. So,
that's true.
But no, I mean, I live right in the heart of downtown Tempe, and I walk to work pretty much every day. There are days that I don't ever get in a car, and I love it. This is easily over the last 4 years since I've been mayor. It has been the best commute that I've ever had. The days that I don't get in a car and I'm walking around the downtown and there are residents who will see me on the street and notice me and roll down their window and honk their horn and wave and say hi. The bus drivers will say hi to me all the time when I'm walking down the street as well. I love the opportunity to pop into small businesses and have conversations with them. So, I mean, this has easily been the best commute that I've ever had because I'm experiencing less traffic than I ever have. I live directly adjacent to where my work is, and it's good for my mental health. It's good for my emotional health. It's good for my physical health in terms of just being out walking. And I don't have any problem hitting 10,000 steps a day. My watch tells me all the time. And I just love it. So no, I mean, I've had some places where I've had some reasonably good commutes and I've worked at places where I've had some annoying commutes. But I will tell you, this last nearly 4 years of being mayor and living right in the heart of downtown, hands down the best commute I've ever had in my life.
That's as good of a pitch as any. Now,
that doesn't mean that I'm going to be mayor forever because I like the commute. Let me just be very clear about that. Like, I love my job, but at some point this is going to be someone else's job to take, and maybe I'll still live downtown, but I'll walk somewhere else.
There we go. There we
I
go.
just didn't want anyone to take any subliminal messages from any of that. Like, this guy's going to be mayor for 30 years. No, I am not. It's not going to happen. I have very little hair left, and I would like to keep some of it. So,
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Mayor Woods, thank you so much again for your time and for sharing some of those stories with us today. It's been fun.
thank you. No, I really appreciate it. See, and I was worried that you were going to make me do something else, like another podcast of eating hot wings of an escalating heat level. So I'm just glad we got a chance to talk about traffic and things of that nature, and I didn't have to spill sauce on a suit or anything of that nature. So I appreciate you for that.
You're giving me some ideas for future episodes. Fortunately, the others that live in this house can't handle much spice, so I don't keep a lot around.
For the record, I want you to
Unfortunately.
know that one, I have actually done that. I actually did that competition at one point. Not exactly how it's done on YouTube, but at the same time, though, I did when you opened your fridge. I did see like a thing of barbecue sauce or hot sauce, like very quickly when you gave me a glass of water. So there is some sauce in this house. I did see it when I walked in the front door. I just have to be very clear with the listeners here right now. So
I don't want to lie to anybody.
no,
so I appreciate you
don't
checking
need-
me on that.
I don't either. I'm in politics. I don't want to be accused of telling any falsehoods. So yeah, I really. So can I ask you a question actually?
Absolutely.
So how did you start this? How did you get into podcasting, or like kind of what interested you in this topic in the first place?
Yeah, so I had a different podcast in high school, which basically
You had a podcast in high school?
I did, but it was completely unrelated to this. Nothing to do with Aaron. No, she's
Okay,
like,
ladies and gentlemen, this is the problem here. Is that like when I was in high school, I was just going to class. Like, he already had a podcast in high school, which shows me I clearly was not doing enough when I was 15, 16 years old, because he already had a podcast going.
it was more of, I call it more of like a recording where I would talk into a microphone. I talked about words. So it was about like etymology of words and what different words meant. It was totally,
Really?
totally unrelated to any of this. But I say that to say, like, I learned some of the technical blips of this whole, production piece that I'm glad I don't have to relearn now. Now we still have microphones that fall sometimes, but
I was going to
cameras.
say that, but I didn't want to do that. I thought that was going to be that'd be wrong. But hey, you brought it up yourself. so.
But in terms of all the back end, the editing and all that, great time for a photo right there. But in terms of all the back end and editing, got that out of the way, learning how
Yeah.
to do that. But yeah, actually I went to ASU, was an entrepreneurship major in undergrad at WP Carey, and
Go Devils.
stumbled into planning an event for Ryan actually during Phoenix Startup
Oh.
Week in 2019, I think. 2020. No, it was 2020 because it was like a month before COVID. That's how I met Aaron. And stumbled into an internship with Cul-de-sac as a result of that event and meeting Ryan that day, and had never heard of Cul-de-sac at the time, had never thought about urban planning, urban design as something I was interested in being a part of. But through that internship where I was doing marketing work, PR work, that sort of thing, realized that this urban planning design thing was the crossroads of everything I was interested in silos that I was trying to start some work around as in an entrepreneurial capacity, whatever it may be. And so then kind of realized that I wanted to go this path of going urban design, urban planning sort of deal. So that's led to work with companies like Better Block in Dallas, doing some placemaking around the country, and then moving here to experience living at Cul-de-sac for a bit. And then this fall, I'm actually we're moving to Columbus, Ohio.
Really?
In May here, because I'm
Oh
going to
my
be
gosh.
attending Ohio State for landscape architecture and urban design school for the next 3 years. So
I went to University of Michigan.
I
for
was going to say,
undergrad.
I've seen some pictures of you in
Yep.
some maize and blue, and I wasn't going to bring that up.
We might have
but
just won a national championship. But I mean, but
We'll get you back next
it is
year.
what it is.
Diehard Buckeye. I was born and raised there, so it's
Okay.
it's carried through. It's kind of returning to the place. I mean, everybody that grows up in Columbus loves Ohio State, but now I'm going to say I went there too, so I have more of legitimacy behind my.
For the
my
record,
family.
I'll be in Cleveland on March 15th, so there's no hatred towards Cleveland at all, or Ohio. I love it. And I was actually at a conference in Columbus last June.
Oh, awesome.
They have an exceptional food hall out there.
Yes.
Oh my God, I ate there every
Which
day.
one are you talking about? North Market,
I can't remember the name of it.
where you write down Arena District
I
downtown
think, yeah,
area?
I think it was
North
there.
Market.
That
it was
place,
probably-
like
it's awesome.
I am a food hall. I have food hall issues, like that probably require some kind of like intervention. And like like the Tempe Eats one that's down here right now at Mill and Southern, like favorite, like love it. I like seriously, like I ate there every day that I was at the con. It was a United States Conference of Mayors conference, and every time I had an opportunity to walk out of the conference and actually go get food when we weren't having sessions, I was over there.
Huh.
So that food hall is phenomenal.
I do love that.
I
place.
co-sign that.
And because of the success of that that North Market in the short North, there's been a lot of other ones popping up. So hopefully, if you ever make it back, you'll have many to choose from.
But they're great concepts because the fact of the matter is there are a lot of people, like I'm a very adventurous eater. Like I will pretty much eat anything. And there are a lot of people that I know who are also very picky eaters. And so the fact is like having like the opportunity to have kind of central like space in the middle, like, you know, all the like the food purveyors are sort of on the exterior and people can all just go get what they want. And then we all meet at the center table and we just all have dinner together. We have lunch. And so it takes out this whole issue of like, I don't want to eat that, or that's not what I want to go, or trying to pick a restaurant for people who don't like to eat much. So it's like, so for me, the food hall is not only a place to get great local food, but it also actually solves that problem of like the picky eater issue. So
yeah, something for
so
everybody.
so you're from Ohio though.
I am.
I was born in Atlanta, so like
Yep.
there's no, I don't have any like real Ohio State, Michigan beef. It's just,
Sure.
you know, like sometimes you feel like you have to carry the beef forward just to do it for the purpose of the podcast, but like there isn't any. Just one, I love everyone.
That's great.
I just wanna let you know.
I mean, I believe you. I'm trying to believe you right now.
You should.
But I
You
know
should.
how deep this rivalry runs, so it's hard to believe.
I know, but you know, look, I like Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, I have no issue there. Like seriously, it's all good.
You're saying that, hoping he's going to be out here in this year.
I might be doing that actually. I might be trying to get him to come to the Cardinals, maybe.
We'll hope he hears this. If he's listening to this, I'll be really excited.
Look, I'm not with the team. I can't get like a tampering charge. I can say whatever I want. I don't work, you know. I mean, it doesn't, you know. I'm just trying to deliver, you know, an exceptional football team out here. I'm trying to help with whatever I can.
But when he does come here, he should consider living in Tempe.
Of
right?
course.
That would be smart.
Look, we're surrounded by 5 freeways. We have places like cul-de-sac right here in the city of Tempe. Why would he not want to live here?
I don't know.
Why would you want to live anywhere else in the valley but the city of Tempe? The best 40 square miles a guy could ever have.
Marvin Harrison Jr. to Tempe.
To Tempe.
That's how we're
Like,
going to end.
Start the rumor right now. You can tweet that out. So, you know, so yeah, but no, I just think this is really cool. Like I love the ability to, I love like kind of like all the new media platforms and the ability to have conversations about things like this. And I also love when the conversations sort of drift into more personal areas where it's, cause like I have a real love for housing and also urban planning, but it wasn't deliberate. It was something that I just sort of stumbled into, kind of like what you talked about. I got into politics and got elected at 29, largely on a platform talking about the need for more affordable and attainable housing. But it was largely because my friends were all like in their 20s at that point, and they were struggling to find ways to stay in the city of Tempe and throughout the valley because things were getting expensive. And so I was like, well, you know, you don't want to lose all of these talented people who went to school here to other places, you know, throughout the valley or throughout the country. And so I thought, you know, we need to find ways to create more affordable housing. My mother was a teacher for 30 years in New York City public schools. And so, you know, I have a real affinity for like teachers. Her sister was a nurse, and that's those are a lot of the professions that are also getting very rapidly priced out of a lot of housing markets. And so it was frankly learning more about public policy and hearing stories from people that made me get really into the housing space. And so now if there's one issue that I spend the most time on as mayor, and even in my just sort of like personal life, it's working on housing issues. Like I'm like, my staff makes fun of me when I go to like a housing conference. They're like, oh, you're going to go hang with the housing people today. And they're like kind of like joking with me. I'm like, yes, because I actually really like this stuff. It really interests me. And the notion of creating more like, you know, sort of dense walkable spaces where people don't have to get in cars to get around and get the amenities they need. That like really interests me. Like, so kind of like you, I stumbled into my passion in life. So
yeah, it's one of those things where no matter who you are, what you do, how you move around, your economic status, everyone's dealing with urban planning, transportation, whatever. You cannot escape it. It's one of the few things there's no like path out of that conversation and that dilemma every day. So
absolutely.
I think that leads for a lot of growth potential in this conversation of bringing more people into the tent and into the conversation. So we're trying to have a little bit of different chats than just talking to the same group over and over. I love a lot of the urban planning podcasts out there as myself, and
I've been on a couple of them.
Yeah, how I listen, I love listening to them, but there's a lot of people that wouldn't just inherently go listen to one of those. So I want to hopefully have some of those folks on and you know, cross some aisles.
Absolutely.
So,
no, I think it's fantastic what you're doing. I mean, I just really appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I love the fact that, you know, that you're expanding it a little, kind of the genre a little bit. So I just appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, even though we found out this whole, Michigan, Ohio State thing right at the end of the podcast, I would have still agreed to have done it even if I had.
I was going to say I saved it for a reason.
I felt like, you somehow like withheld that from my scheduler, but that's okay though. Like it's all good. I still love you and it's all good. I would come back and do it again anytime.
I was going to say you're welcome back on anytime.
I would love to come back whenever you got something. I mean, hey, look, I work right up the street and the streetcar will bring me here. You let me know. I'll come on down. So
deal. Sounds like a plan.
Perfect. Excellent.
Mayor Corey Woods, thank you so much.
Thank you for the time. Appreciate it.